And Shannon, how many?
We're ready. Thank you everyone for joining us on the Friday the 13th edition of the Payroll Solutions Community Q&A. We have a special guest presenter. It was supposed to be Scott Weilige of Wealth Centers of America. However, compliance issues forced a change because I know a lot of you guys in the group are CPAs and EAs and you've got your own compliance things. Well, in the insurance world and financial advising world, that is compounded greatly. So Isaac has agreed to fill in because I'll let Isaac fill in why he's able to get past the compliance where Scott wasn't, because I'm not totally clear on that myself. So the whole topic of this call today is retirement plans for yourself or for your employees. So we're going to discuss 401ks, Roth IRAs, SEP and simple plans, and anything else Isaac would like to discuss. So without further ado, I am going to hand the rest of the call over to Isaac.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks for the opportunity to get on this call. Thanks to everyone out there across the country, I believe, kind of logging in to learn a little more about retirement. As Shannon mentioned, I am filling in for Scott Weilige, who's with Wealth Centers of America. I actually I work for Nationwide as a regional vice president for 401k sales. And I partner with Scott in this retirement plan aspect. And so he asked if I could pop in. We have a, no pun intended, nationwide presence. So that's where I think from a compliance perspective, not knowing where everyone was going to be located, making sure that we had someone that was licensed to speak to everyone in every state. As Shannon mentioned, our compliance friends are the best of friends. So we always try to keep them happy, right? Today, wanted to kind of just go over very high level. So from to let you understand where kind of my role and my expertise lies is primarily in the 401k marketplace. But as we get into the 401k market space, oftentimes the beginning stages of a 401k, a company or a business owner or an individual is coming from another type of retirement plan, whether it's a SEP that's been set up, sometimes it's a simple IRA scenario. There are lots of different sort of retirement plans that can happen before or earlier in the process before a company decides to set up a 401k plan as their employee benefit focused on retirement planning. So I just wanted to be able to touch high level on what are some of those options. I am not a tax professional, so any sort of tax questions will not be anything that I would be able to address here. I also, in part of my role, I'll be able to provide a resource to you guys as well from an administrative plan design perspective. We work hand in hand with a lot of third-party administrators that actually work with a plan design and at the beginning stages. So a lot of the intricacies of designing these plans is another resource that I can be able to assist you guys with. But wanted to kind of just walk through what are some of the advantages where we see 401k show up. What are some of the reasons that we see business owners and small businesses decide to make the transition from whether it's a SEP or a simple IRA scenario into the 401k world. So I wanted to go over, there's really three major components that would make sense for a business owner or a small business. When you look at transitioning to a 401k, what are they looking to accomplish? What are the advantages of the 401k that make sense? So I'll kind of walk through just a couple high level, specifically looking at a SEP IRA and a simple IRA, where they kind of fit, and then we'll transition into a 401k if that sounds like a plan. good. No objections is good. So
that sounds great. And I just realized we're not actually live on Facebook. So, but we can keep going. It's being recorded. If anything, I can just post the recording on Facebook later.
Okay, perfect. So we'll kind of just walk through the SEP IRA first. So we'll kind of walk through who it's for, and sort of what are some of the restrictions that kind of fall within that, right? So a SEP IRA, who's it for? It's for self-employed individuals or for small business owners, including the employees of those small business owners. It's available to sole proprietors, partnerships, C Corps, S Corps. Some of the advantages to a SEP IRA, it's easy to set up and maintain. There are flexible funding requirements, and there's a wide range of investment choices that you can choose from there. Some of the contribution limits, employees can contribute to those. When you transition to a simple IRA, this is usually for a little more established businesses, usually still with under 100 or fewer, well, required to be under 100 or fewer employees, and self-employed individuals, available to the same sort of business, same sort of a business that it's available for your sole proprietors, your partnerships, your S Corps. Advantages here, this is a salary deferral plan with less administration than a 401k. There's a wide range of investment choices there as well. When you start getting into contribution limits, though, this is where the simple and the SEP IRA can kind of, you run into your challenges. In the year 2020, so coming up, the employee contribution limits on a simple IRA are up to $13,500 in salary deferrals. If the individual is older than 50, they have a catch-up provision that allows them to go as high as $16,500. These are usually, as from an IRA perspective, these are individually managed, and usually you provide a couple different options from those participants and those employees to be able to choose the investments that they invest in their tax deferred. When you look into sort of what my day job is and what I spend most of my time talking about is in the 401k space. And we work with 401k plans anywhere from startups that are starting just out of the blue with $0 involved, all the way through plans that are multiple hundreds of millions of dollars inside of them, and with a wide range of employee sizes, business sizes, anywhere from just your sole proprietor, an individual, just one person in a plan, all the way through thousands and thousands of employees inside of a plan. And so these 401k plans can be applied to a wide range of businesses and business sizes. But what comes along with the 401k? What's the difference in a transition from a simple or a SEP into the 401k? And what comes along with it is more administration. There's much more administration to keeping track of all the contributions, the salary deferrals, and then also the record keeping of each one of those accounts. But the advantage is there's help. There's administrative help that comes along to help a business. And usually what that happens through is by being able to plug in and work with the payroll provider, right? So obviously you guys as payroll representatives are at the crux of retirement planning. As individuals and employees are receiving their paychecks every week or every other week or once a month, however often that is, those are the funds that are used to fund these retirement plans. And so the 401k is being able to sync up through a payroll provider with the payroll of a company to be able to alleviate some of that administrative burden there is a key factor in the 401k world. But then also what you're looking for is the investment choices that are available, and not just the individual funds that you can choose from, but the actual share classes. In a majority of 401k record keepers, what an individual employee is choosing from is usually a much less expensive share class of an individual fund. And I won't get into the specifics of share classes. But for just an individual walking off the street, if you were to buy a mutual fund, usually you're going to be looking at a share class of A, B, or C, which ends up being more expensive than an institutional share class, which is designed for institutions to be buying with much larger chunks of money than you or I walk off the street with usually. And so the advantage of doing that, think about going into a Costco and you're buying in bulk, right? And the average cost per little cereal box that you buy is less because you're buying in bulk. And that's really what the mutual fund version of institutional share classes is, buying at bulk. And so if you're working with a larger company like a Nationwide or a Principal or a John Hancock, those of us that provide record-keeping 401k services, we're able to get those investments in bulk. So it provides a lower cost investment experience for them. But beyond the access to funds, they're also able, each individual employee is able to defer a larger or contribute a larger amount. So in 2020, for a 401k, an individual participant is able to contribute up to $19,500 in salary deferrals, or if they're older than 50, up to $26,000 every year. So you can see that's almost a 50% jump in the amount of money that an employee can contribute to these. In all of these plans, the goal of them is an employer to provide a benefit to the employee so that they can prepare for retirement. And so the ability to be able to save more is very valuable and increases the benefit that an employer is offering to their employee. But along with, lower fees, better resources, what is top of mind for employers across the country nowadays is not only giving employees the ability to access investing and to be able to save money, but they recognize that a majority of their workforce across this country is not financially, they may be financially literate, but they're not financially experts. They're not in the financial industry. They're not investing experts. And so how can they be expected to invest their money in a way that could be successful? And so one of the biggest terms in the industry today is around financial literacy. It's around retirement readiness, financial wellness. These are all buzzwords. They really hit at the crux of how do we help educate individual Americans that are saving for retirement how to do that. And those are the resources that come along with so many 401k providers today, is not only a place for individual employees to put their money away, but education around how to do that. And whether it's just education or even in some cases advice on how to do that. It's resources that are available online, that are available through webinars, but also live bodies showing up in person at places of employment to educate them on how to use that plan, how to use those dollars, and how to save so they're set up for retirement. So I think when you're looking at transitioning a business to, when they're looking at their retirement benefits, whether it's a SEP or simple, or then transitioning into a 401k, the areas to look at are how much are the employees able to contribute? What are the caps there? How involved does the employer want to be in either providing matches or contributing to that as well? Those are two features that help really define how much of a benefit and thus how much of an employee retention tool does this become to the employer. But then it's not only how much are they putting away, but also what are the resources that are being made available to them to help educate their employees to be able to be prepared for retirement.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So the employer must match. Is there a minimum percentage that needs to be matched? And with the match, does that add to the maximum allowed contribution, or is the employer match disregarded for the maximum allowed?
Are you asking for a specific plan? Like So for example, for a simple IRA, from an employer contribution perspective, they must either match the employee contributions up to 3%, or that can be reduced to 1% in any 2 of 5 years. There's lots of rules here that go to it. And again, this is getting into some of the plan design perspective. In the 401k world, an employer is not required to match. Depending on how they set up the plan design, and one of the disadvantages to offering a 401k is that now you're governed by ERISA. And so there's ERISA laws of how this 401k plan has to be set up. And there's testing that goes into that to make sure that certain individuals, usually the more highly comped individuals in a plan, are not taking undue advantage of this plan over the rest of the employee base. So there's testing that goes into it. And one of the releases from this testing is to be able to just offer what's called safe harbor provisions, which means that you sign up to actually match. And so matching adds to the cost of these plans, obviously, from an employer perspective. But there are plenty of 401k plans out there that the employer is not matching. So it's not a requirement. It's just if you are not matching, then there's certain testing requirements that have to be accomplished. But that match would contribute to how much is being saved. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. The other question I have is that, you have maximum allowed contribution, and if the employee contributes the maximum and the employer still matches and that goes over that contribution, is that an issue?
So that is the total. So the total employee contributions cannot exceed $56,000. So there's just a different limit there to where an employee can reach their maximum. In 2020, that individual employee maximum is $19,500 in salary deferrals, or $26,000 if they're over 50. And the employers then may make a matching contribution or a profit sharing contribution of up to 25% of compensation, with an additional $57,000 cap on that. So there's different caps. So an employee can max out their employee, and then the employer can keep on top of that.
And that's the same with a simple, right? The employee can max out their max contribution, and the employer match doesn't count against them.
Correct. So it moves it up. Yeah. Different numbers.
Perfect. Thank you.
So if an employee is maxed out on their contribution, then the employer match would go away then, wouldn't it? Or do they still need to contribute 3 in whatever the match would be? That's the part I always get confused on.
So I'm less of an expert in simple and SEP world as I am in the 401k space. In the 401k space, employee can max out what they're able to individually contribute to the 401k plan, and then the employer has a separate set of maximums that they can add on top of that. So in the 401k space, the employer is providing dollars in there. It does not decrease the amount that the employee can contribute.
Okay, thank you.
If a lot of the questions in this space from you guys in your group are around some of those sort of requirements and limits and employee versus employer, another one of our partners that works very close with Scott and his team, and also with me and my team, is a representative from one of our third-party administrator partners. And what they do is they take on the burden of the administration of these plans and the setup of these plans. So maybe it's a future guest on one of these plans that would be able to dive into some of those specific setups on the front end and how that interacts employee, employer, from a limitation perspective. I know Betsy Kelly is someone who works hand in hand with Scott and I, and when we're going out and trying to help businesses on the 401k aspect. She will probably be able to speak to some of those specific details a little more specific and maybe in a little more depth than maybe I can. As Scott's 401k partner, we spend a lot of time working in the 401k space and going over some of the benefits and ways that we can engage with these individual employees and trying to help them get prepared for retirement in a way that helps their retirement be what they want it to be.
Oh, that sounds great, Isaac. Thank you for throwing that out there. We're coming up on what time we're normally finished, but I didn't know how far along in your discussion or your topic you were. And
I had my eye on the time the whole time, so I'm pretty well. That was, again, very high level. When you're looking at, I'll send you, Shannon, just kind of a piece that walks through in more detail those individual retirement plan options that I think will be a valuable resource for you guys to have, and you can probably address with some of the questions that you may have specifically. So I'll send out a resource that you can share with the team and those that are on the call today that can be a resource, probably more valuable than even memorizing what I said.
right, and I'm not seeing any questions in the Facebook group, so I don't know if anybody who's live on the call with us has any additional questions. If you're not in a position where you can ask the question, you can throw it in the chat and I'll read it and ask it. But otherwise, let me just take a look at the Facebook group again. All right. Yes, I'm not seeing any questions pop up in Zoom or in Facebook. So that concludes our discussion.